Go ahead. Okay, thank you all for coming to the training tonight. This is different from our trainings that we've done in the fall. It's a financial workshop covering certain topics instead of an overall background of what your financial responsibilities are. So let me just introduce, I'm Shani Asato. I am the council treasurer. Mary Sharp is also online. She is our financial secretary. Our 9th VP of Director of Budget and Finance is Wafa Zaroli. She's not on today. Jennifer Rusty, I believe I saw her on here. She's our auditor. She had a training last night for the auditor. And Amanda Gutierrez is our 7th VP for council. This is all the information. If you need to contact any of us, if you have questions about anything, please feel free to reach out to us for any financial question you might have. We're always available and we'll get back to you as soon as we can with an answer. And if we don't know the answer, we'll find out for you and pass it on. Okay, so as you all know, our workers' compensation annual payroll report is due on January 31st, 2023 at the end of this month. Every PTA unit must submit a report, even if there was no one paid. The report covers the period from January 5th of 2022 through January 4th, 2023. So it will be necessary for you to gather information from last school year. So you will need to contact the previous financial team if you don't already know the information that you need to know what info needs to be submitted. The report and any necessary surcharge will be due directly to AIM Insurance, not through PTA channels. There is a link below for the online form, which is the easiest form that you can use to submit your form. Everything will be entered on that form. If you go to this link here, it will take you straight to the link, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Once you enter all your information, and then it'll ask you if you have any employees to report. And there's also an instructional video on the CAPTA website, as well as written instructions for completing the form. If you do prefer the paper form, the link for that is right here, and as well as the instructions for this form. The report can be filled out and signed and submitted by either the treasurer or the president, although the treasurer may have all the information handy on that's needed to fill the form. So if your PTA did not pay any employees, individuals, or independent contractors for services, then you can go ahead and check the no one paid option. But who should be listed on the report? So in general, any employees, individuals, or independent contractors that are directly paid by the PTA should be listed. Examples could be any person that you hired for security for any event, if you hired babysitters, DJs, or other entertainers that that provided service at your school or at one of your events. People that you do not include on the form are individuals who are paid by the school district. There's some units that provide funds to the school directly to the TUSD that for resource teachers, individuals that are paid through the district. You do not include those individuals. Those individuals are covered by the school district workers' compensation coverage. So if there are individuals or independent contractors that you have paid throughout the year and they do have their own workers' comp insurance, you still have to list them, but you must request a copy of their workers' compensation certificate and upload that with your form. If there are individuals or independent contractors that do not have their own workers' comp insurance, then you list them on your form, and then your PTA may owe a fee based on the total amount of that you have paid to those individuals. So say you list your a DJ and someone you hired for security, and the amount comes out, total amount that you paid them for that year is say it's $1,500. So you will owe a surcharge on 5% of the total minus 1,000. So you'll owe a surcharge on 5% on the $500 for those that do not have their own workers' comp insurance. We'll go through a list of examples in a little bit on who you list on workers' comp and who is not listed as well. Okay, so now we'll talk about 1099s. The reason why I'm talking about workers' comp and the 1099s are that both of these are due in January. As you see here, the 1099s must be issued to any individual, independent contractor, or vendor who is not incorporated or treated as a corporation and who has paid $600 or more for services in a calendar year. So this form must be issued to them by January 31st. And again, it's for anyone who has paid over $600 who is considered to be an individual or independent contractor. Also, if any independent contractor or individual requests a 1099, even though they were paid less than $600 for services, you must also provide one. And note that this is based on the calendar year, not the fiscal year. So again, it would require you to go back to January 1st, 2022 to determine if there were any individuals or independent contractors that were paid more than $600 through the end of last year of 2022. And it's slightly different from the workers' comp requirement, but generally it's the same time period. One thing that I recommend is that the PTA units request a copy of the IRS Form W-9, which is a request for taxpayer identification number from any contractor or vendor that you think you will pay or that you will pay $600 or more for services in the calendar year. You can request that from them, from your vendors when you hire them and when you make your arrangements for them to come to your event or to your school. And then that way you'll have everything in place and ready to go when you need to issue the 1099s. There's one other California EDD requirement, and that any individuals or independent contractors that you pay $600 or more within a calendar year, you must also file the form DE-542. The link to that form is here. One thing I must mention about the 1099 NEC form is that you cannot just go to the website, print out the form and fill it out. It has to be on an official IRS form. So if need be, you could order these forms free of charge from the IRS and they will send them to you. Or you would have to purchase these forms. They're available at most stationery stores, I believe, and also on Amazon. But again, you cannot just print out the form and fill it out. You have to get the official form from the IRS or from the store. I mentioned the IRS Form W-9. That is, as I mentioned, it's a request for taxpayer identification number and certification. There are situations where the PTA would need to fill out this form. So sometimes when you hold a fundraiser or someone wants to donate to your PTA, they may request a form from you. So then you will need to fill it out and provide it to them. And then why would a PTA unit request it from an organization? As I mentioned before, if there's any vendor that will provide a service for your unit, you should ask them to fill out this form. Not only does it provide their tax identification number, so either the social security number or the employee identification number of the organization, it provides that, but it also lets you know if the organization is an individual, independent contractor, sole proprietor, or a corporation. So as I mentioned, your 1099s need to be issued for individuals or independent contractors. 1099s do not need to be issued for corporations. They may request it, but it's not a requirement. You are required to submit it for individuals or independent contractors. Also for your workers' comp form, most usually if it's a corporation in California, they are required to have workers' comp insurance. So by getting the W-9 form, you'll know if it's an individual independent contractor or corporation, and whether or not they need to provide you with their workers' comp insurance if they have it, or if you need to include them on your list. And Brigitte just mentioned she has some extra 1099 forms. Thank you. That's very generous of you. I remember I was scrambling at 1 month to a couple years ago to get the 1099 forms that I needed to file for the unit that I was at. So yes, that was when I was scrambling last year. So yeah, if you have any other questions, please just don't hesitate to jump in and ask these questions. We're going to go through some examples. Oh, sorry, I forgot about this. Here's a sample W-9 form if you need to fill it out. If an organization requests that you fill it out, you put your PTA, California Congress of Parents, Teachers, and Students, and then you put your PTA unit name on line 2. We are considered to be an association, 501c3, a nonprofit organization, and then you just fill out the rest. And any PTA board member can sign the form and submit it to the requesting organization. So here are some examples. It'd be great if you guys want to chime in and provide what you think, what if we should do yes, no, or whatever. If you want to do it on chat, if you want to just say yes or no, unmute yourself and jump in with the answer, that would be great. So our first person here, John Smith, he hired him to be the DJ for a school dance, and the fee was $400. So do you include this person on the workers' comp form? Correct, Bree. Yes, you do include them on workers' comp form. Presumably, John Smith is just an individual, and presumably he does not have workers' comp insurance. However, regardless, you do need to include him on the workers' comp form, and then you find out whether or not he has insurance. And correct, you do not need to issue a 1099 since the total amount paid was less than $400. Okay, say you have an elementary school, say you have an elementary school librarian that you paid $1,000 for the year. It's not someone that was paid through TUSD. It's just someone that you're paying this person to just man your school library for the year. That is correct. You do need to issue both. Again, it's just an individual that you're hiring, and you want to make sure that they're covered by workers' comp insurance. You include them on the workers' comp form. PTA is covered up to $1,000, so that that would be you will not owe a surcharge, since the surcharge that you pay is the total amount less $1,000. And yes, you do need to issue a 1099 because person was paid more than $600. Oops, I gave you the answer for the next one. Okay, resource teacher, funds are paid through TUSD. Total amount paid for the year is $10,000. No, you do not need to issue a workers' comp form, and no, you don't issue a 1099 because this person is considered an employee of TUSD. PTA is just doing school and providing the funds to the district to pay for that individual. Okay, so the next one, say you have DJ Company Inc. It's a DJ for grad night. You paid them $700. Do you need to include that company on the workers' comp form? And do you need to issue a 1099? Says both now. Correct. It is a corporation. Presumably it's a corporation. The Inc. kind of gives it away. Since it's a corporation, they are required to have their own workers' compensation insurance. And also, since it is a corporation, you also do not need to issue a 1099, even though they were paid more than $600. Okay, Sue Johnson was hired for security for an event and paid $200. Again, correct. Workers' comp, yes. 1099, no. It's an individual that does not have their own workers' compensation insurance. So you put them on the workers' comp form, and it is less than $600, so you do not issue a 1099. Okay, last one. Mike Jones hired for an assembly and paid $800. Yes, again, thank you, Bree, for answering these questions. But it could be, you have to find out from the W-9. Just looking at it, Mike Jones is probably an individual and he paid $800. So since it's an individual, you put him on workers' comp, and more than 600, issue a 1099. Perhaps it could be a corporation. So in that case, then if it is a corporation, you would not issue either. You would not include them on the workers' comp form nor issue the 1099. This one, it just depends. But that's why the W-9 is important to request, and that this could be a company that he owns, that is through which he does these assemblies. You just need to find out whether or not what the W-9 says. So I hope this is helpful. I hope you guys have been working on these workers' comp forms and the 1099s. Oh, I forgot to change the title of the slide. Change this. Anyway, if you guys need help, if you have specific questions about your workers' comp, maybe if you have them now, we can bring that up. That might be helpful for everybody. One thing I should have put on here and mentioned, last year, we were told to include your tax preparer as someone on your workers' comp form. However, the 33rd district had a workshop last week regarding the workers' comp form. And they said that the insurance company told them, if your tax preparer or your bookkeeper, whoever does your taxes, if they're doing a one-time service by doing your taxes, they don't necessarily need to be included on your workers' comp form. But if they are integral to performing an integral service for your unit, perhaps they do bookkeeping every month or something that's an ongoing thing throughout the year, then yes, you do need to include them on the workers' comp form. If the person, I know some units may have already submitted their forms by including the tax preparer. There's nothing wrong with including them on there. It just depends on your definition of what the integral service is, and some units include them and some may not. Okay, so next, let us talk about proof of tax exempt status. As you all know, PTA units are nonprofit organizations. In order to keep that status, the PTA must be in good standing with all federal and state filings. So that includes your taxes, your charitable trust registration, your raffle reports if you registered for raffles, anything that has to go through the state and federal entities, that you need to be in good standing and up to date with all filings. So once an organization becomes a nonprofit 501c3 organization, the IRS issues them a letter of determination. So for California PTA, the letter was issued to California PTA overall, since they are the umbrella over all the units. And then CAPTA issues a letter along with that. So they have the letters from the IRS and the Franchise Tax Board indicating that the California State PTA is a tax exempt organization. And then CAPTA issues a letter confirming that the unit is part of CAPTA. So if your unit would like to have a copy of this, the president or treasurer can request the letter of determination from CAPTA by sending an email to that email address here. So you must include the following information: the unit name, the council name, which is Torrance Council of PTAs, the district name, which is 33rd District, and the president's name. And then they will send a letter specifically with your unit on it, and also the copies of the IRS and the franchise tax board letters. Another way of providing proof of your tax exempt status is from the franchise tax board, is the entity status letter. There's a link here where you can request a copy of this letter. This is if you applied for a raffle, if you've tried to register for a raffle, this letter is required to accompany that report, that registration form. And if you are deemed to be delinquent in any of your state filings, for example, your taxes, charitable trust, or your raffle reports from previous raffle registrations, then this letter will come back as that your unit is delinquent. But if everything is up to date, then this letter will show that you are approved and everything is good to go in terms of the state. As I mentioned before, there are companies and organizations that you're doing fundraisers with or want to donate to the PTA may request a copy of the letter of determination as well as the IRS form W-9. Just some other topics that we're going to go over that are just general to PTA right now. So the mid-year budget review. Now is probably a good time to start looking at your budget. You probably already had your major fundraisers and have got a better idea on everything, all of your events that you're going to have for the year. So now's a good time to look at your year-to-date budget and make any necessary revisions. The treasurer generally chairs the budget committee, or the treasurer does chair the budget committee. That's according to your bylaws. And your budget committee usually consists of the president, your financial officers, and any other board members that would like to take part. So you look at your budget to actual report, how it's gone so far. So did your income from your fundraisers come in as expected? If it was higher or lower, if your membership is higher or lower than expected, same with your expenses, if those were higher or lower, or are there new programs or fundraisers you want to end, or have you canceled any of your programs or fundraisers? Just see if your fundraiser came in, was awesome this year and you raised a whole lot more money than you expected, you may be able to create some new programs and fundraisers, or if they didn't come in as expected, you may have to make some cuts to some other programs. But now is a good time to look at it.
Can you give a little bit more guidance on this? Because I thought in a training I had attended, if the expenses are over the budget, then you're supposed to use like your reserve, like your beginning cash balance line item. So does that mean like when you're coding in PTA Easy, you have to ping that reserve line item and then manually track where you're over? Because I feel like, how do you report a budget versus actual report unless you're tacking those expenses against the correct line item? And then you're basically effectively allowing, I'm new to PTA and I'm new and then starting off in the treasurer role. So I have a long question on that.
So when you do have an expense that is higher than what is budgeted, that should be approved by your board. You should have that approved. And when you make the motion to approve that, you say that overage is coming from your
I guess so. Like technically, though, we are able to use the unbudgeted line item reserve.
Yes.
Technically.
Yes.
However, but you're saying it should be approved by the board.
Any overage of what has been budgeted should be approved. Yes. But when you make the motion, you say, "Can I?"
Or do you? So this is where I'm getting a little bit confused, because as the treasurer, I don't feel it's my responsibility to have to be the bearer of bad news and tell someone, "Oh, this community over here went over budget," right? Like that's not like. Is that my responsibility to tell the board?
It is the responsibility of the financial team, depending on whoever the receipts and reviews the receipts and to write the check, whoever is responsible for doing that. So it's either you or the financial secretary, but you would say that, okay, this is, or they need to come whoever is requesting the check and knows that they're over budget, and then they should come to the board and request approval to go that it's an approved expense to go over budget
So I shouldn't cut a check if they've gone over budget until it's approved? at the
until
board
it's
meeting?
approved. Yes.
Even though technically though, we can cut the check using the reserve line item. That's where I get
Well,
a
anything that's over the budget, whatever's in your budget, anything that goes over that, that should be approved by the board before the check is written.
Okay.
Your board and your association approved you paying what was in your budget, and also the funds that have been released at your association meeting was only up to that, presumably up to that budgeted amount that that had been approved earlier.
Okay,
So-
so what if it's a fundraiser and you're bringing in extra money on you're over on your income, but you
Mhm.
still have to pay expenses out? Does it automatically mean if you earned money that you don't have to change and increase your budget for expense? Or do you need to still?
Okay, so that's kind of that's a little bit different. So budgeted expenses, if those budgeted expenses for other things like programs, events, whatever, so if they go over your budget amount, then yes, you need to approve the budget. But if you have something like a fundraiser, like you have a fundraiser coming in and you're expected to pay the fundraising company, say 20% of your income,
Mhm.
then, and you only budgeted a certain amount, then it's an in and out kind of a thing in that case. So that budgeted expense does not need to be separately approved. Do you see
Only
the
if it's a
difference?
fundraiser line item though? What if
Well,
it's a program?
if it's a something where you're bringing money in and the money going out is a portion of what you brought in, then that doesn't necessarily need to be approved. But if you have an event where you're only saying you only want to spend $500 for your I don't know.
How would you know
Mayor.
that though? Like
Mark.
I feel like that gets a little bit sticky because I don't know what the intention was because I just inherited a budget, right? I just see the line item says 500.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
How do I know that that's allowable even if the income comes in over, that you can still increase on your expense because it's supposed to be a profitable thing, right? That you're still going out of balance on your.
Exactly, but that's why there's a little bit of a distinction there, and that like which school are you from?
John Adams.
John Adams. So like if you have a lot of the elementary schools do these fundraisers where they pay a percentage to the fundraising company or however they're doing it to pay for the fundraiser. So like in that sense, definitely that is already coming in. Whatever's coming in and expense going out is just depending on what the expense going out is just depending on what comes in. That's directly related.
No,
So
that's
that
not what I mean.
expense-
Like we had an event and it cost us $2,000 to run it instead of $1,500. But
Okay.
we also brought in an extra $500 on income. But do we still need to release and change and increase the line item for expense because it was a program? Let's say, like if it's a program, it's not even a
If
fundraiser.
it's a program, then probably you should approve that because it's a program, then that's like more of this is what was supposed to be spent on that program, and that's what was approved.
And so at a board meeting, you just go in with your motion saying we need to increase, like due to the excess expenses, we need to increase this line item by this amount, and then.
Yes, and and you increase it by whatever amount to come from your unbudgeted reserves.
Okay, so then let's say like my last board meeting, right? Like how you're saying things change. So we're having a new fundraiser. And now with that new fundraiser, we're gonna need to, then at the next boarding, once it's approved, you add in a line item for the income expected and income and expenses expected. So it takes like two board meetings in a sense, right? Because you first have to have a board meeting to amend adding it to the budget, and then you need a board meeting to make the line items. Like for
No,
budget.
not 2 meetings. No. So at your executive board meeting, you make your change, you make your changes, approve the changes to your budget, whether you're adding income line or budget expense line.
So if we're going to add a new fund for the year at the same board meeting that the board approves to add this fundraiser, we should also be adding in how much is the income, how much is the expense at the same time.
Yes.
Sorry, I have a lot of questions. I guess I should.
No, that's okay.
Privately on this. I don't know if everyone else has it. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And are you allowed to fundraise for a program in a sense? Like, can we say like we're gonna fundraise for something we're trying to fund as a program? Because like then I feel like the program still needs a budget modification because that doesn't actually change their program budget. But people running the program think, well, I brought in all this money, so like don't I automatically get the expense increased?
If you are fundraising specifically for something,
Uh-huh.
then that money needs to be earmarked for that purpose.
And how do you reflect that or know that in a budget? Because you're just looking at, I don't, how would I know?
So I could go over specifically how you would do that, but you would have to keep track of that and you would have a line of, for instance, we do Project Hope and Project Boss through council, correct? And units donate money to council to fund those help us fund those programs. So any donations that we take in for those programs, we have them earmarked. There's an income line for that program that takes in all the donations for that program. And there's also an expense line that to spend those funds.
I get that if it's an income, if it's a donation. So I can understand a donation in a sense, but this isn't a donation. This is fundraising for a program.
And all same thing. If you're fundraising for a program, then there would be an income line for that program.
But it has to be under a fundraising category for tax return for your 990. You have to show it on your taxes returns as fundraising. So it's a fundraiser.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the fundraiser brings in money and you have to show your fundraising expense, what it costs you on the
Programs
then,
are allowed to have income. You can have the income on a program. It doesn't only have to come in on as and considered to be a fundraiser.
But it's not the same day. It's like we're fundraising all year long for a future program. So those fundraisers need to be on your 990 as fundraising. And then later on, your program expense is what you have to, what the program cost. I just don't see visually how doing fundraising throughout the year automatically changes the budget for the program, or that still needs to be modified after you
earn the money. It does not. Fundraising alone does not change your allowed expenses for a certain program. It does not. However, your any fundraising that's done by the PTA overall goes into your general PTA fund. Now, if you fundraise, if you're having a specific fundraiser for a specific event, then those funds need to go towards that event or program. You cannot raise money, say, I'm going to raise $500 to buy books for the library, and then say, okay, I'm going to spend that money on something else. Those funds need to go towards the library.
And if you don't spend the whole $500, you have to keep it in the library fund to spend for next year. That's what we do with the Project Hope and Project Boss stuff.
Yes, so any funds that are raised for a specific purpose, not just a general PTA fundraiser, general PTA event or whatever, anything raised for a specific purpose must be used for that purpose. You cannot use it for something else.
Do you like list like restricted then as like a fundraising with like a restricted word or something to identify that? Is that
you can call it, for instance, yes, for instance, we have a Project Boss fundraisers. These are all things that should be discussed in your executive board meetings and approved by your executive board. And then when you put it in the budget, you say that whatever fundraiser for, and it would go towards that fundraiser or program, or however you decide to designate it, however the board decides to designate it and approve it. And again, it all has to be approved by your board and approved by the association.
So I need to know the dollar amounts approved, like projected fundraising income, and then projected that we're going to restrict prior to the event. But we should be stating the dollar amount projected of earning, most likely in the board.
Yes, I mean, it's all estimated. As I said, this is why you are able to review the budget. Your fundraiser may have been very successful, so then you want to change your budget and say that your income from that fundraiser will be higher, your expenses may be a little bit higher, but and then you can designate that the funds to go as needed for different programs. But yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Sorry, I kind of took
Oh,
over.
no, 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 that's
I
okay.
might contact you privately now that I know you
That's
have.
fine. That's
not
fine.
the
No
gist.
worries. And thank you, Rebecca, for your input. I appreciate it. Okay, so where was I? Okay. If you are adding any new programs, activities, fundraisers, make sure that those are in compliance with your insurance and loss prevention guide that's available on the CAPTA website. If you just Google CAPTA and insurance, it'll take you to their insurance page, and then there is an insurance guide on there that has a list of activities that are allowed. As we mentioned, that any revised budget, any revisions to any budget lines, up, down, whatever, it doesn't matter. Any revisions need to be presented for approval to your executive board and your association. And also make sure that any new programs that are added and new fundraisers are approved by both the board and association. This must be included in your minutes for insurance purposes. But one thing I want to make sure that you should always keep a record of your original budget for the year so that you have the original budget that you started with at the beginning of the year, because as you make changes throughout the year, these may be due to extraordinary circumstances, because like say for COVID, our everyone's income was a lot lower, expenses were a lot lower. You always want to have a record of your original budget so that you know what a normal, quote, normal year looks like. And you don't want to start out with a budget that was due to other circumstances, higher incomes, higher expenses that may not be normal for most years. But this is just to have a record so you know where you're starting, what's a normal place to start from each year. Okay, membership dues. You need to make sure that your unit is forwarding the council portion of membership dues to council every month. The presidents are sent a list of things that are due each month, and membership dues are at the top of that list. As you know, your membership dues include the council portion of $6, which council keeps a very small amount per member, and then we forward the rest onto district, who then forwards it on to CAPTA, who then forwards on to National PTA. So your membership dues include your council portion of $6 plus the unit portion, which is the portion that your unit keeps. So you only need to forward the dues to council that you receive by cash check, your online sales. Only if we forward the council portion to council for membership dues that you receive directly. If you receive dues through Totem or council, council solicits members each year for all the units. If you receive dues from Totem and council, you are only being given the unit portion, so it is not necessary to forward any dues to council for those members. You want to check your budget to actual report. I'll go over this in a minute, but the transitory membership income should equal your transitory membership expense by the end of the year. So if your transitory membership income is greater than the transitory membership expense, then that means that there are dues that your unit owes to council. Now, who is responsible to ensure that these membership dues are forwarded to council? It's really incumbent on the whole board, but really the president needs to make sure they're turning a check in at the council meetings, executive board meetings each month. Your membership chairperson is the one that generally takes in and logs all the members for your unit, and one that's depositing the money and then writing the check. So all three entities need to make sure that all of the membership dues are being forwarded each month. We have found that towards the end of the year, a lot of the units are playing catch up, and they're submitting checks towards the end of June to make up for what was not paid throughout the year. So it's just easier if you guys just do a check every month. Look at your budget to actual reports and see if there are dues that are owed to council every month. And one more thing, council solicited membership checks. We will be issuing these checks, I believe, at the February meeting. I guess it's on me to do it, write the check. So I intend to have checks ready for you for all the council solicited members that we have gathered so far. Please, please remember to cash these checks. The checks will be picked up by the presidents at the meeting and taking them back to unit. Please remember to deposit these checks. These will be for members that, again, council has solicited from community members, and generally they are purchasing memberships in many units. So they, instead of writing individual checks to all the units, they do it through council, so they can just write one check to cover all the members. So please remember to deposit these checks as soon as you get them. Okay, so I'm gonna go over this. It could get a little complicated, but I want to go over this just because this is I want to make it easier for you to understand where all your membership dues are coming from and recording them as such, so that it would be easier to tell if you're all membership dues to council. So how should your budget be set up? This is not a requirement, this is a recommendation, but it makes it very simple to look through it and determine if dues are owed. So let's say that your membership dues are $10. So that means your unit portion is $4 and your council portion is $6. So what we have here, we have 3 different lines to take into account the different ways that you may be collecting members. So 001 is for the membership dues that your unit collects directly. So you collect them, people pay you cash, check, online sales, they pay you for their membership dues, they pay you $10. So in your budget, you're assuming you may take in 500 members in this using this method. So your membership dues income 001 for $2,000, that's $4 times 500 people, is $2,000. So this council portion, on the other hand, $6. This is counted as non-unit income, transitory income. That's where that term comes from. It's transitory. It means that your unit owes that money to council. So for those $6 for 500 members, you're budgeting that you will take in $3,000 for those members. Now, say you're also using totems. So you're budgeting here, you're expecting to bring in 125 members at $4 each for $500. So this is where you would record your members that you gain from totem. And also our, as I mentioned, the council solicited members, we solicit members for you and also only pay you your unit portion. So say you might collect 12 members that way. So at $4 per person, it's $48. Now for, there's another line here, 003 membership donations. You want to make sure that if you, a lot of people may give a donation to your unit with their membership dues, but you need to make sure that that money is counted on a separate line. You do not include it with your membership dues. Since this money here, donations are now not counted as part of dues. So there's a separate line here that you log in. So say one person, you have a receipt for a check for 20 bucks and it's for one member. So you would log in $4 under 001 for membership dues income. You would log in $6 for your transitory income under 002. And then say it included the additional $10 was for a donation. So $10 would go under this 003 membership donations income line. So that way, if you look at the total amounts that you take in under each budget line, so if you divide 001, 001A, 001B, if you divide that by $4, that should match up to the number of members that you have taken in each, using each different income. And also that should match up to your transitory income, or whatever you have, however number of members you take in is based on what was recorded under 001 should match up the number of members under 002 income line. Now, so then when you write your check to council, that's what your transitory expense is. So if you're writing a check for 100 members, then you would log in $600 under the 002 line as you write your checks. And then at the end of the year, this total under the 002 income line should equal your 002 expense line. That just means that you paid to council all of the dues that have been collected for the year, and you do not need to pay any at the very end of the year. That means that everything is matched up. Whatever you took in has been forwarded, and then we have forwarded on to district, and CAPTA has recorded all of those members, and that's the official number of members that CAPTA has recorded for your unit. Sense? Do you guys have any questions on that? Like I said, this is not required to do it in this way, but I found that this is the easiest way to do it, and that you will always see exactly where your membership dues came from, and you will always see exactly how much you may or may not additionally owe each month to council. Okay. There's no questions, then we'll move on. Gifts to school and classroom rewards. I know we tend to go over this at most of our workshops, but questions always come up regarding gifts to school and classroom rewards. So we will do this, go over this again here. So some programs have, some units have a program called Classroom Rewards, where the PTA designates a certain amount of money that will go to each teacher, usually to purchase supplies in their classroom. And this is a program that's generally approved by the association, and it's something that they allow the teachers to do throughout the year, to submit their receipts to be reimbursed for supplies that they use in the classroom. So this, in a sense, is a program. Gift to school is usually amounts that the units give to a school for larger items that are usually that stay with the school, and they are decided on and approved each year by the Gift to School Committee, the executive board, and the association. These usually are not, it should not be included in your budget at the beginning of the year, in a sense that your unit is not required to give a gift to school to the school every year. Depends on the amount of funds that you have available. As we mentioned earlier, your fundraisers may have gone very well, your expenses may have been less. So in that sense, then you'll have funds left over that you can, the unit can vote on, the board and the association can vote to gift something to the school. So when you do plan to do a gift to school, you should form a committee. This committee is usually composed of the PTA president, along with board members, and also the school principal or other administrators and teachers. So as a group, as a committee, you want to discuss what the needs of the school are, and see if there are available funds, PTA funds, that can purchase those items. There are some administrators are very quick to come to PTA with requests, and there are also some administrators who really would try to work with the school's budget and try to use school funds. But regardless, either way, they will come to provide recommendations to the committee on things that are needed, and then the committee will decide on all of the input that they receive, and then provide recommendations to the executive. And then the executive board will discuss and approve as they deem fit, and then they will present it to the association for approval. One thing that is considered, field trips and also payments for bus transportation are considered as gifts to school. So your field trips, just as a reminder, your field trips must be approved by the TUSD school board. They must get that, needs to be put on their agenda, and they must approve it. There is also a list already of field trips that are approved by them. And also the bus transportation must be paid through the district as well. This is for insurance purposes. The district contracts with different charter buses or their own district buses, and that the coverage for insurance coverage for those buses are already covered through TUSD. You do not want the PTA unit to be responsible for anything that might happen with bus transportation.
By TUSD, does that mean like we can make a check to this, like John Adams for those items, right? And then there you do some other form that goes along
So
with
for
that?
any gifts to school, for
Mhm.
if you're donating money to the
Oh,
school,
for field trips and bus transportation.
so for dress transportation, you definitely write your checks to TUSD,
Not to the, so
not
what
to
is,
the school.
does the school have a bank account? Like, how does that work then? Because I
They-
thought if you write it to the school, there's just like a separate form you have to fill out if you do it that way.
If you, any funds that you write to, if you write a check to TUSD for any funds that are you're giving to the school, this is the way the district wants it to be done. They want the check to be written to TUSD. TUSD will put it into an account for the school. And they will keep track of any funds that are donated and what the purposes for those funds.
Can you
So-
send us the contact information of who the TUSD people are we're supposed to like contact them? How do you get them a check? You know what I mean?
So you give the
Like,
check, you write the check to TUSD, you fill out, the next thing I'm gonna talk about is the
Okay.
fiduciary agreement.
that's the form of thing. But I thought you could do a fiduciary agreement and then paid to the school. I don't know. But
Okay. Here's
really,
your
one more
fiduciary agreement.
question really quick before
Go
you
ahead.
move on. Sorry,
No
I'm like,
problem.
on the
That's-
previous slide. I'm so sorry.
That's what we're here for.
Okay, can you go back to the previous slide? Sorry.
Sure.
It's like,
Oh, sorry. Oh. Okay, hold on. How come I can't go to the,
oops, sorry.
there we go, I'll just go this way. There we go.
Okay, so classroom rewards, that's what I was
Mhm.
thinking about. So,
So
now we're
classroom rewards, then those would be, the teachers would be submitting the receipts for reimbursement, just like any other person would be submitting a request for a check.
so you mentioned the word program. So is that really a program? Like, because I was thinking that's more of like an administrative thing. It's really just like a reimbursement, but that's actually considered a
It's-
program.
Well, the units that I have been involved with, we have a classroom rewards program. It's called a program. And that we designate a certain amount for each teacher for them to use to reimburse them for any supplies that they use for the classroom.
So if I made a mistake in our budget and it's currently listed under administration, but I want to make sure my programs and fundraisers are all lined up correctly for
Mhm.
990 tax reporting purposes,
Uh-huh.
can I just move that to programs? So I'm ready to go for the tax return, or do I have to do a board meeting motion to explain to everyone that I messed up and put as admin and needed to be a program?
Any revision to your budget does need to be approved.
Even if it's just like
It doesn't, I mean, it
classification.
doesn't change, like throughout
Yeah.
the year, it doesn't change your spending or anything. It's already approved, but for designation, you should just have your budget approved with it in the correct category.
So do people normally then just email like you're recording the person that takes on the minutes like ahead of the budget meeting? Because I feel like in the meeting they're gonna like be trying to take notes. It's gonna like all these
Yeah,
changes.
I
right?
mean, you could, any revisions you should, I mean, if you would like to give it to your board for review ahead of time, you could send it to everyone on the board for review. You could present it, a copy at the meeting for the board to review at the, and
Thank
then
you.
have a copy given to the, the recording secretary.
I feel
If
like all
you're
my
doing
budget
a
modification is
revision-
gonna take over the whole board meeting.
Well, if you have a lot of changes to your budget and you want it to be, and you can just make one blanket approval, like I move to approve the revised budget as presented. Or if you have only certain lines you want to have approved, then you move to approve those specific lines. But if there's an overall revision that you've changed several things, and you can call it out during the meeting, but you don't have to make motions for every single line that you change.
Okay, so I can just present like a new Excel budget and say, here's the, and then kind of talk through it without having to list out so
Yes,
many, every
yes.
single change in it. Oh, okay, thank you, thank you.
But if there are just a couple, like if there's, then go ahead and make an individual. Okay. And So yes, Rebecca said something, she goes through our school secretaries and they send the check to TUSD. That is correct. They, any check written to TUSD, they know to send it, forward it on, and then it is always, I'm sure they have a procedure in place where the funds that they forward to TUSD is designated for your school. So, and you can request an accounting of your PTA donations as well from the secretary. Request it from the secretary, and the secretary will get it from the district, and they will give you a list of all the money that has been donated by PTA and how it has been spent. So you can keep track of that as well.
Are we supposed to receive something back that says it actually costs that amount of money? Like, how do we really know how much it costs for the buses? Is that,
Usually for buses, the transportation department will send an invoice or accounting of what was spent for that month, and then you will have to pay them, write them a check for that.
so it's after the fact, so we don't need to give the money in advance of the field trip? We're supposed to be paying?
I
an
believe
invoice
it
after?
still is that way. That's how it was way back when I was doing that for elementary school. But usually, yes, that is the way they do it. They give you the they after the next, at the end of the month, they'll have an accounting of all of the bus trips that were taken that are going to be paid by PTA, and then you will write the check for that. Okay. Christy asked about field trips. Field trips can be paid through the district, so you can pay them through TUSD, and TUSD can write the check. You can also pay them directly. Approval of the field trip by TUSD. That you should work with your school, usually the school secretary. But there is an approved list of field trips that have already gone through the process with the school board for approval. So you should make sure any field trips that are planned are either on that list or are planned far enough in advance so that it can be put on the agenda for approval by the school board. I recommend highly working with the school to make sure that all of that is approved ahead of time.
Okay, so it's our responsibility to make sure that it's approved by TSD. We can't just take the principal or admin's, word for it saying that, yes, it's approved, this is where we're going.
Usually they would know. But I mean, if it's something new that you should confirm. I mean, the list is available. There is we have it on our Torrance Council of PTA's website. I believe there's a link to an approved list, and also things come up throughout the year where different trips are approved. So you just want to make sure, just confirm with the principal. I mean, in the end, the principal is going to be responsible for any trips that are taken, not just PTA. So you should just confirm with everybody, admin, and the office people, that trips have been approved.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, any other questions regarding this? So move on to the fiduciary agreement, which is what we were talking about. This agreement is to document the schools, to document what the purpose of the donation was for. So for instance, if your PTA unit is giving a monetary donation to the school, then this documents what the money is, what the purpose of those funds are. So if you look at this form, the agreement is to spend a certain amount of money for a certain purpose, and there's a date by which those funds should be spent. And it's signed by the president, the treasurer, and the school administrator. The funds, if the funds are not used for a specific purpose by a specific date, then the PTA it's within their right to request a refund of that money. Now, the administrator is required to sign this form if as a part of accepting the donation. If they do not wish to sign the form, then the that just means that they are not accepting that donation for that purpose. So you want to make sure that all parties are agreed on what the donation is being made for. If you're giving an equipment of an item, then a donation of an item, excuse me, then this agreement transfers the ownership and responsibility for that equipment to the school. So that installation, operation, maintenance of any needed equipment is then transferred to the school. Again, by having the signatures of the president, treasurer, and the school administrator, then that is what the equipment is designated for.
I'm so sorry again. Okay, so
That's okay.
maybe in the past there was some kind of like, let's say a software that the PTA gave to the school, and now like the maintenance of that software is like, because it's like an IT thing, it goes, the bill is made out to Torrance Unified. So are we allowed to pay an invoice that's issued to Torrance Unified with PTA? Like, how do we do that? Because like, I don't know if we're supposed to just cut a check that's an invoice for the, issued to Torrance, but then
If
PTA
it's-
is paying that invoice.
If PJ is agreeing to pay for that invoice, and it has been
Like
If
how do we know that that Torrance Unified didn't already pay it, and then I need to just give Torrance Unified the money back? Like, I guess because I work in accounting, it seems a little weird to pay another company's bill. Like, it seems like if Torrance paid it and then I reimburse Torrance.
that's what, so if you were to do a gift to school with money to pay for that, then you would designate that to be used to be paying for that invoice. And that would go into your, as I said, you can request an accounting of all the funds that are donated. Then you would, on that accounting that the district would provide to you, it would say that those funds were donated to pay for whatever that software is. And then it would say that it was spent for that purpose as well.
Okay, so that would be, but do I need to really do a whole committee over that? Because it's already some of those from the past, right? I don't need to it's $100 maintenance fee annually.
If it's something that is not budgeted, then you should, it's considered a gift to school. So every gift to school should be approved by your board and association to pay that amount. It's
okay.
Prior boards cannot obligate future boards to pay for something. So every year, then if that's not part of your budget, if it's not budgeted, that's what you are agreeing to pay for this, then, and it's not approved every year, then it needs to be approved by the board and association.
I think it is approved. I just thought on the previous slide it said something like you have to have a committee for gift to schools. But if it's already been approved and it's already in the budget, I guess I see a line item in the budget for that type of expense. So I'm assuming that they already did that, right? The committee stuff, but in the past. So we would then do this fiduciary agreement, donate to the school the amount of money in that amount of that invoice, and then the school will pay the invoice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So does the school not naturally just pay things that are invoices issued to them until they have received this?
It depends on how, that I'm not sure of, but it depends on how the school has it designated. I'm sure the school goes through where the funds are coming from to pay for certain things. And that, for instance, bus transportation, most PTAs do cover that for the field trip. And so then the district just waits to be paid by the PTA. They don't take the funds out of the
So the district kind of just waits till they get the money from us and then they pay that bill after they, okay.
That I'm not sure. You should double check on that. I'm not sure exactly how they do that at district, but
okay. And would it be someone at Torrance Unified that's similar to the bus person, or someone in their accounting handles all this?
You should talk to your school, to your office, and they can find out exactly how that's handled.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So one thing you need to do is also keep track of all your fiduciary agreements. For instance, if you donated money, say you donated $10,000 purchase a marquee. I know marquees cost way more than that, but say you donated $10,000 to purchase a marquee, you want to make sure that that money has been spent or it's in the process of being spent. You want to make sure that it's done by a certain date, and you don't want them holding onto the money and perhaps possibly using for something else. And generally they know that whatever money is donated for a specific purpose must be used for that purpose. And just keep track of what's been donated, and you don't want it to be building up over time and the funds not being spent as designated. Okay, next thing. So I know this is kind of early to be talking about this, but since many of you this may be your first time, just to keep in mind of things that need to be done at the end of the year. So once the year has done, so after June 30th, your responsibilities, your books should be closed, and you prepare all of your year-end reports, which is your treasurer's report for the year-end, financial sector report, budget actual reports. You want to gather all your information for the audit that is needed through January 1 through June 30th and pass it on to your current auditor. You want to prepare your treasurer's annual report, which will be due to Torrance Council the following school year. You want to begin preparing your federal and state taxes and your charitable trust registration for the fiscal year that's due November 15th. If you registered and held a raffle, or if you registered for a raffle during the school year, then you must submit a raffle report by October 1. So even if you registered for a raffle, but you did not hold the raffle report must be filed by October 1. And then you want to make sure that you pass on all of your financial items and to your incoming financial team and let them know what their responsibilities are. You can assist them with the preparation of their budget for the next school year, which should be done at the last association meeting of this school year, and transfer everything over to them. So I mentioned the audit. As you know, your auditor does 2 audits per year. So July 1 to December 31 is the first audit to be done. And then January 1 to June 30th is your second audit period. And then the financial records that you should give to the auditor for each period are your permanent financial record book, your checkbook register, bank statements, bank reconciliation, your payment authorizations, your receipts and invoices, cash verifications, deposit records, and all of your state filings. And your treasurer's annual.
Janie, sorry,
Yes.
it's Jennifer. Hi.
Hi, Jennifer.
You know, in our training yesterday, and I tried looking for it. I don't know if maybe you can answer this question.
Mhm.
So on the bottom of the auditor report, it says about being a qualified accountant. And then, so there was a question of that, like what constitutes that? And it did say to look in the insurance guide for the,
Okay.
for that. And I looked in the insurance guide, but it didn't say anything about, like, it didn't give any.
So is that, I'm not, I don't have a copy of the bottom of the audit report, but is that the one where it's asking for the approval of the audit review committee? Or if it was done by,
Yeah. So when they first wanted the audit review committee,
Mhm,
they doctored the report a little a couple of years ago,
mhm.
to have that, the signature line and all that. And
Yeah.
then they've updated it again. And the new updated one has, are you a qualified accountant? Yes or no? And you check the box, yes or no. And then it says, right under that, it says, definition of a qualified accountant can be found in the insurance guide. And so somebody asked that yesterday, and because she's not an accountant per se, but she does accounting that's what she does for a living, but she's not a CPA, like a,
Mhm, mhm.
so I was kind of like, well, to me, I mean, you probably know more than I, obviously know more than I do. I'm like, you should be able to teach them, so for me, and I'm, for the most part, everybody's,
You're the audit review
review
committee,
person.
correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
From
I
what
was
I-
looking
well-
at the guide. I didn't, there was no like definition. There was nothing.
Yeah. From what I
about it.
understand, I mean, as long as you have your audit review committee and your audit review committee reviews your audit, then that's sufficient. I think if you're an auditor and you are an actual accountant, is that, then you don't need an audit review committee? Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
that
the
would
only
be
thing-
correct. And I think
only
the
thing that-
definition of a qualified accountant means that you actually have an accounting degree. You do not have to have a CPA, but you do have to have an accounting degree,
Accounting
I
degree.
believe.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, because I was trying to find that in the insurance guide. 'Cause that's where it said to look,
Okay.
it said to look there, but I didn't see anything. I just thought maybe if you or Mary knew.
Yeah. Has
Yeah.
CAPTA updated that? Because you know what, on CAPTA's website, that the audit form does not have that. It
Yeah,
doesn't have anything
CAPTA is-
about FEMA.
Well, the fillable one has not been updated, but the, the one you can print and download and print and all that.
Oh,
has
wow.
no-
See, that's not right. They shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, yeah, we had
Well,
that
maybe
issue. 'cause
that
somebody
is-
asked about-
Maybe that's
That's not
something
true.
that you can confirm with the 33rd district auditor or the financial team there, and then
Okay, thank
Mary.
you.
Yeah, this feels new to me because actually I was an auditor when my daughter was in kindergarten. Now we're 5th grade, but it's been so long since I've been on the PTA. But I do have an accounting degree, but I don't remember that topic coming up at all, that there has to be a person with an accounting degree in that role.
It's
And so,
a fairly recent.
You don't have to have an accounting degree, but if you don't have an accounting degree when you're doing the audit, then it has to have the audit committee.
okay, so
But if you have a degree, then you don't necessarily need to have the committee review your work, is how I understand it, but we can confirm with 33rd.
Okay,
What I
yeah.
believe
okay.
too.
and then on the audit committee, is there like a requirement how many people need to be on the committee? And then that has to be board approved, the committee, right? I gotta take
You
note.
do have to,
Yeah.
your audit review committee does need to be approved. Jennifer Rusty, our council auditor, has agreed to be each unit's audit review committee. So your unit does need to approve Jennifer Rusty as your audit review committee if you're going to use her for that role.
Okay, this is all good information. I did not know that. And yes, we'll reach out to her.
Yeah.
And
So if your board has not already done that at one of your meetings at the beginning of the year to approve Jennifer Rusty as your audit review committee, then you need to make sure that you do that.
I'm not even positive if our auditor has a degree in accounting. Like I said, I'm new to like
Yeah.
PTA this year. I was on it like 5 years ago, but I don't.
No, and it's perfectly fine if your auditor does not have an accounting degree. Like I said, like Mary said, as long as you have your audit review committee approved, then that is fine.
How about a finance degree? Is there anything other, there has to be accounting specific? Do we know?
That I'm not sure.
And then
It doesn't have to be Jennifer. It's just Jennifer's really easy and willing to do it for everybody.
I do it already anyway. I'm already doing that when they turn the audits in. I
Mhm.
look through and that's all the audit committee person's doing, is just looking at the audit report numbers and making sure they match. So I do that already. So it's kind of like I could be, except for my unit, I can't be, but
Mhm.
for all the other 29 units, I can be the person just to sign that paper.
I should send you my
Um,
Excel sheet that I made years ago. They still use it. It's a it's a cheat sheet on how to put the bank rec numbers into the Excel, and it has like the words of exactly how to type that or write that on the form.
Yeah. What unit are you from?
John Adams, 33rd, I guess.
Adams. Oh, okay. Trying to think.
And actually, our insurance guide does not say anything about having to be, it doesn't actually give the definition. The section
It doesn't.
on the
Yeah,
audit, it
I
says,
looked at it
your
today.
organization must conduct the annual audit review of the books by an audit/review committee or qualified accountant. That's it.
Yeah, and it doesn't give a definition, which it
No, it
says
doesn't.
on the audit report
Right?
that the definition can be found
Is it?
in
No,
the
it's not. I just looked
insurance
for
guide.
it.
So that's
I
why I
just
thought
looked at
maybe you
it.
guys knew.
Liars.
Okay. So we
Um,
can, if you have, if we can confirm with 33rd district what the requirements are, but
Awesome.
if we,
Shani,
just make sure that you have an audit review committee. Yes.
I did have an end of the year question.
Mhm.
So about, obviously the last 2 years I haven't been treasurer, but 3 years ago, we had you at the end of the year, you would send out that kind of annual treasurer's report doc that it was like
Yes.
an Excel doc, and you'd plug the numbers in and it would go into the report. But now I'm noticing people they're just turning in like a budget to actual or,
Yeah, we'll go over that. We're getting to the annual treasurer's report too.
oh, okay, sorry. I saw
That's
you
okay.
I heard you talking about it.
That's-
The slide before, so I thought.
Yeah, no, we're going to talk about that in a second. But
Okay.
Rebecca had a question if the audit review committee needs to be approved at your board and association. Yes. It needs to be both board and association approved. Okay, let's move on. Annual report, that's what's next. So each year at the end of the fiscal year, the treasurer prepares an annual report. It just summarizes what your gross receipts and disbursements are for the entire year, broken down by category and budget line, your fundraisers, programs, admin income and expenses. Your tax preparer usually uses this report to prepare and file your taxes, and this report must be turned in to council, to us, and we also forward it on to the district BTA. So there are 3 different ways that you can do this report. This is what Jennifer was just talking about. Most of the units do use PTEs, My PTEZ, so you can just create your budget to actual report that covers the entire fiscal year. This is new, starting last year, I believe, that 33rd district is accepting this report to cover that treasurer's annual report. So you just do your budget to actual report to cover the entire fiscal year from July 1 through June 30th, and that you can just send that in. What Jennifer was talking about was that we used to have an Excel file where you have to enter in all of your different expenses for all the different categories covered in the report, and it would automatically, you'd fill out a spreadsheet and it'll automatically populate a form that in Excel, and that would be what you would provide to us. However, they simplified it and said you can just use your budget to actual report. Some units do prefer to still use this Excel file, and that is entirely up to your unit, whatever you want to do. But most units have turned in budget to actual reports. It's just easier. You just run the report in My PTEZ, and that's what you submit. The third option is to just make up your own report, but as long as it covers all of the information that is on the sample report in the CAPTA toolkit. Again, this first option is the easiest. The second option is a little bit more work involved, but is allowed. And this third report, I don't necessarily recommend this, because these other 2 options are already there for you, but it is an option that you can use. Again, as I mentioned, a copy is due to Torrance Council in October. So this is just something that should be worked on at the end of the school year, after everything has been accounted for, all your expenses and deposits has all been accounted for in your accounting, and prepare the reports. And again, federal and state filings. So as you know, all units must file your federal and state tax returns each year by November 15th. So your federal can be your 990 EZ. And if your income is less than $50,000, you can do the 990N, which is the e-postcard, which is simplest to do. Same for the state tax return. If your income is less than $50,000, you can file the e-postcard. In addition to your taxes, you must file a charitable trust roll, which is the RRF1, must be filed with the California Attorney General's office with payment, and it's due by November 15th. If your unit files the 990N, the e-postcard, then you must also fill out the form, the CTTR1. Sorry, I should have put links on here to these 2 forms, but if your unit files the e-postcard, your RF1 must be filled out and submitted along with this CTTR1, which is the state's version of the annual report. Otherwise, if your unit files a 990 or 990 EZ, you just submit your RF1 with a copy of your 990 or 990 EZ. Now keep in mind that this must be done each year. If you file the 980N, submit your RF1, but you do not include this other additional form, then your unit will be considered to be delinquent, and you may not be able to register for different state things such as the raffle registration. Just as long as you make sure that something always accompanies your R1 with submission along with payment. And if your unit holds a raffle, you must register that raffle with the California Attorney General's office. Again, I'm sorry, I should have included the links to these forms, but they suggest you submit your registration form by September 1 or at least 60 days prior to your raffle. No raffle events nor advertisements for your raffle events can take place until you have received approval to conduct that raffle. After your raffle is held, or even if the raffle is not held but you registered, you must file a raffle report, and that's due by October 1 of the following school year. Incorporated units. If you are an incorporated unit, you must file a statement of information form with the California Secretary of State's office every other year. Usually you get a postcard reminding you that it is due that year. But sometimes units don't always receive them or they're not sent out. I just sent out a couple of reminders today to some units that have a form due by the end of this month. You can go online to search for your unit. If you go to the Secretary of State's office and look for the statement of information page, you will find a way to search for your unit, and it will tell you when your statement information form is due. And again, copies of everything that you send out, that all of these filings must be turned into Torrance Council as soon as they are done. Again, we forward on copies of your taxes to district. District takes a look at them, make sure it's all done correctly, everything was filed appropriately. And so we require those things to be turned into us so that we can forward it on to them. And that was the last slide. So are there any additional questions that you have? Anything specific to what we talked about or just anything in general? If you don't want bringing them up here with us now, you're welcome to email us and ask us specific questions. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us. It's much easier to take care of an issue before it gets into something big. So if you have any small questions that you might have, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And if there is no other questions, then thank you so much for attending. I apologize, it went a little bit longer than I was thinking we would, but again, thank you for all your questions. I appreciate all of you guys attending, and good luck with everything. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.